more commonly known as the coronavirus. The latest update from the World Health Organization indicates that over 470,000 confirmed cases have been recorded around the world, and more than 20,000 deaths have been reported. In Zambia, 16,000 confirmed cases have been recorded as at 26 March 2020. Our sympathies, 16 as on 26 March 2020. Our sympathies go out to all those who have lost their loved ones all over the world due to this pandemic. The impact of the outbreak has been both extensive and severe, including but not limited to a health crisis and an economic crisis which is characterized by financial market stress and a collapse of commodity prices. The outbreak has led to disruptions in supply chains, created uncertainties, and significantly dampened near-term growth prospects. Following these developments, various sector ministries have provided updates and a range of measures to contain the spread of the pandemic within the Zambian economy. In addition, His Excellency the President, on Wednesday, 25th March 2020, gave a number of directives, which I would like to reiterate here for the purpose of emphasis and to indicate the significance of the statements that he made. One, that Zambian missions abroad and the Department of Immigration must be alleged to review the issuance of visas for people wanting to travel to Zambia, as well as all ports of entry into the country for all travelers from countries that are affected by the pandemic will be quarantined for at least all international flights to and from Hari Mwanga Nkumbula, Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe, and Mfue international airports are suspended. Instead, all international flights should land at and depart from Kenneth Kaunda Airport only. This is to ensure efficient and effective screening of all travelers, as well as following them up by our health authorities. Now, following from these directives, I would like now to discuss the impact of the pandemic on both the global and the domestic economies, with a view to providing citizens, business houses, and investors a preliminary assessment of the changed economic landscape and mitigatory measures that are to be undertaken. The impact on the global economy. There is a slowing down in global growth. Preliminary assessments by the International Monetary Fund indicate a substantial slowdown in global economic growth in 2020 compared to 2019. The full assessment is expected to be provided at the upcoming virtual spring meeting of the IMF. Two, there's a drag on global trade. Global trade has slowed down following closure of borders and the lockdown in major economies. The reduction in merchandise trade has impacted negatively on revenues, particularly by commodity exporting countries such as ourselves. The cancellation of flights by major carriers has also impacted negatively on trade in services such as tourism. Three, plummeting of commodity prices. Commodity prices have dramatically reduced. In the case of copper, prices opened the year at $6,165 per ton, but closed at 4,754 metric tons per ton on Wednesday, 25th March 2020, while stocks of London stock market have surged to about 225,000 metric tons from about 145,000 metric tons in January 2020. There's also a flight in the of capital in the financial market. the financial market have not been spared by this scourge. The international economy has seen investors divest their funds from traditional assets such as stocks to safe havens that include the US dollar. This has resulted in the US dollar strengthening against other currencies, including the Zambian kwacha. Now, I'd like to turn my attention to the impact of the COVID-19 on the Zambian economy. I will now give a preliminary assessment of the scourge on the Zambian economy. I should mention that the full extent of its impact will depend on the severity and duration that this pandemic lasts. But while discussing this pandemic and its impact, I also want to call your attention that the situation that I'm describing must be seen against the other shocks that this economy has recently experienced, and this include the droughts that we observed in the last quarter of last year relating to the southern part of this country, and now the floods that are ravaging substantial parts of the northern part of the country, and also the disruptions that resulted from the gassing incidents that we observed. Now, in terms of GDP growth, you may recall that during the 2020 budget address, I projected that the Zambian economy would grow at the recent developments. Growth is now projected to be lower at around 2%, despite the anticipated significant recovery in the agricultural sector. The tourism, mining, manufacturing, construction, as well as wholesale and retail trade sectors are projected to slow down on account of this pandemic. Tourism. In the specific case of tourism, disruptions in international air transport from the United States of America, Europe, Asia, and within Africa, indeed, have had an adverse effect on tourist arrivals. Although the reduction in international air traffic arrivals was about 5% in the first 2 months of this year compared to last year, it is anticipated that there will be a sharper decline in March and the months to come. This follows an increase in the number of cancellations of pre-booked tour packages coupled with travel restrictions and lockdowns in other jurisdictions. Emirates Airlines, Rwanda Air, and South African Airways have suspended flights into Zambia, while other carriers such have scaled down the number of flights into the country.